Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Power Motoryacht podcast. I'm your host, Editor-in-Chief Dan Harding. With summer boating getting started and tens of thousands of boaters returning to the water, we decided it was time to bring a fresh perspective to a time-honored topic of preparing for onboard emergencies, but this time with a true expert, Dr. Robert Leviton. Hope you enjoy the episode. Please stay safe out there.
So our guest today is Dr. Robert Leviton, and Robert is a board-certified emergency physician with more than 3 decades of managing physicians and caring for patients in community and academic hospital emergency departments. He served as the U.S. Sailing Association Disabled Sailing Committee as their lead and national classification trainer, and has sailed with disabled sailors in San Diego, Galveston, Port Charlotte, Newport, Nova Scotia, Kinsale, and his home New York waters as a chief medical officer for the Robbie Pierce One Design Regatta for over 15 years. We met Robert through his course, Maritime Medical Emergency Management, which is featured at Trawler Fest and available at boatersuniversity.com. Like many of our listeners, Robert has come to power cruising after decades of sailing. He now explores the Long Island Sound and beyond aboard his 42 Nordic tug, Tiramisu, which harkens back to Robert's medical school days in Italy, which, if you ever see Robert, he's the guy to ask for food recommendations no matter where you are. Right, Robert?
That is correct. Thank you, Jeff.
And we got Editor-in-Chief Dan Harding from Power Motoryacht with us. Dan, how's it going?
Going well, Jeff. How are you?
Doing great. So we wanted to start with talking to Robert about, Dan, you mentioned this. You carry a pretty decent first aid kit on board, but it's the same kit. The stuff expires. So what do we do about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. And I think my first question for you, Dr. Robert, is about medkits. It's funny. I mean, I don't even know. I don't have a med kit at home. We got a couple, Band-Aids for the kids and stuff. But on the water, I've always been really good about having a nicely stocked med kit. But I gotta be honest, like I haven't opened this thing in years. I have a feeling moths will be coming out. I mean, these things, these things do expire, right? And then if you any advice you have on, what your boating med kit should have, with you.
Yes, one of the things I'd like to recommend for folks is to seal everything in a 4 or 6 millimeter Ziploc bag. Boats are wet, and the humidity on the water will damage the contents, whether it be gauze pads or Band-Aids. The humidity will get to destroy them. So everything gets in a Ziploc bag. And then I like having my kit designed to handle the cumulative emergencies. So what are we talking about? You have to have your assortment of gauzes and bandages, whether 1 inch by 3 inch or knee gauze. You should have some gauze wrap that you can apply to wounds. Obviously, you should have some adhesive bandages and tape. Butterfly bandages that you can pick up from any of the big box pharmacy stores would be also helpful. Hemostatic aids. You may get cuts and bruises on the boat. There are people who I've met in Trawler Fest who are taking blood thinners. So you want to have products like Bleach Stop, which is a powder that you can pour onto a wound, and that will stop the bleeding rather dramatically. There's also something called Quick Clot, which is for larger wounds. Quick Clot is a gauze that's impregnated with a kaolin product, and you can stuff that into the wound and it'll stop bleeding. Of course, there's steri strips, and again, the butterfly strips, but you also want to give thought to possibly having a compression bandage. These are combat bandages that are used to wrap around the wound to control hemorrhage. And then at a last effort of care, you may want to carry a tourniquet as well. Then you want to have your wound cleaning material, anything that will clean the wound, alcohol pads, antiseptic pads, iodine pads. You want to be able to make sure that you have cotton balls and hand sanitizer, some antibiotic ointment, making sure that the antibiotic ointment is one that the individual you're applying it to doesn't have any allergies. And then for strains and sprains, certainly there's a great product out there. It's an aluminum molded splint that's foam covered. You can cut it and fashion it into any type of splint, whether it be for the wrist, the finger, the ankle, the knee, elbow. It's a great piece to have with some elastic bandage, 3 or 4 inch wide bandage. Of course, you need burn care because you're cooking in the kitchen for a great dinner at the end of a long day, and you you want to be able to have a proper material for cleaning. One of the products I like using is called Burn Shield. Burn Shield is placed on the wound directly on the burn, and that will promote healing rather rapidly. Eye care. You want to have eye rinse in case something splashes into the eye. You can rinse out the eye, and then eye patches to use that. And then dental care. This is a really great product. You're out on the water, and suddenly you crack a tooth or a filling falls out. You want to make sure you have a temper and dental repair kit. Very low cost. You buy it without a prescription, and you just pack your tooth with that. It hardens in 3 hours, and it's good for a weekend more.
Wow.
And then you have your
Wow.
instruments. You can see I can go on and on about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah, I
You,
mean,
you you were the right guy to ask.
yeah.
Jeez. I think the one that jumps out, I'm sorry to cut you off, as most interesting that I never would have thought of is the quick clot. I got to imagine that's such a great idea, especially like you said, if some of your guests are on blood thinners and things like that. And I got to think that's not typical of your off the shelf first aid kit, correct?
That is correct. What I did
Right.
was I looked at about 50 different first aid kits, and then from my years
Mhm.
working with the Coast Guard and all of my sailing and cruising buddies around the globe, we
Yeah,
think about what do we really need when we're out on the water and maybe 24 to 72 hours from shore. And
exactly.
getting an injury where you're bleeding is pretty significant. So we go over in the course the signs of a person who is low blood pressure due to loss of blood,
Hmm.
lightheadedness, dizziness, change in consciousness. You can have a light sweating. You lose your pulses. There's inability to take a radial pulse or a carotid pulse, a femoral pulse. Those are anatomic terms, but if you think about the femoral artery, that's in your groin. Next time you're lying in bed in the evening, just feel the artery down there. If you feel a blood pressure, that's a good sign. If you don't feel a pulse down in the groin, you want to
Yeah.
go and check the radial artery by your thumb. If you don't
Okay.
have a pulse there, that's dangerous. Now you're talking 911, get on channel 16 and go Mayday.
Hmm.
Remembering
Yeah.
that Mayday is a call for immediate life or threat to life. We want to make sure that a Mayday call is different from a pound call, which is just alerting people that you may have a problem in the future.
Yeah,
But a Mayday call is, I need something here right now.
Okay.
that's a
Yeah.
great reminder.
How do you make that call, Robert? Like you did cover a few things, but when do you know to do a pan and when to do a mayday? Is it just the severity of the injury, the location?
It's a combination of things. So when we talk about, someone who needs help, we look at what's called the AVPU score. Is the person alert? Are they responding to voice? Are
Mhm.
they responding to pain? Or are they unconscious? Now, obviously, an unconscious person is not a good thing. I would use a Mayday call. But if the patient or individual you're working with is still responding to voice, then you may go to a pan to say, look, I'm in a situation. My patient, my passenger has had an injury and we're trying to stabilize it, but I may need your help. Some of the things that we want to talk about when we're talking about is there active bleeding? And how much is that bleeding? Is it a tablespoon? Is it a cup? Is it 2 cups? When we get to 3 or 4 cups of bleeding, it's time to add a tourniquet. As I said, what is the level of consciousness? Are they
Mm-hmm.
alert? Are they able to respond to answers? When they respond to those questions, are they making sense or are they talking with a slurred speech? Slurred speech may be an indication of a stroke. And some of our boaters are in that age range where a
Mhm.
stroke is a possibility. And then again, if you have, and I like having it in our kit, my kit includes a pulse oximeter. Remember during COVID, we had those finger pulse oximeters. It
Yeah.
gives an oxygen level, it gives a pulse, and then of course a contactless skin thermometer. Uh, I I never like
Yeah.
sticking something in someone's mouth to take a temperature on a boat. The potential for puncturing the tongue is big. So a contactless skin thermometer is also a good item to have, much like you would use on your engines in your engine room, but this is a little different. It's made to read skin temperatures. So those are some of the things that I would use to differentiate between a pan and a Mayday. Again, blood pressures that are low, you can't feel a carotid or radial pulse, that's an emergency. Temperatures below 94 degrees, that's an emergency. That's a sign of hypothermia. We can talk about hypothermia. I think, one of the other pieces you want to have on your kit, because we are on the water, is a mylar blanket.
Yeah.
These mylar blankets can be wrapped around an individual and very rapidly raise core temperature with a simple thin tool. And again, understanding the concept of when to call for help is when any situation rises above your own level of comfort. So I recommend everyone take your own pulse. Remind yourself who the individual is. If your pulse is racing faster than your patient, that's not a good thing. You want to stay calm and be in control.
That's uh that's some really great guidance, and I'm just making some notes here, like the Mylar blanket, the pulse ox reader. Are there, Jeff, especially a Passagemaker and Power Motoryacht as well, we've done some coverage on telehealth, right? Having, the ability, because so much of it is, now you've touched on having the right tools, but having the right tools but no knowledge of how to, fix the engine there is really not going to do. You have all the wrenches, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're still in trouble. Have there been any services that you know of that you might recommend if you're having an onboard emergency, but it's not quite to the Mayday level, but you want to get in touch with, medical professional to walk you through the pulse ox or things like that. Are there any services that you've experimented with?
I have not found one for our community. There are obviously
Okay.
large services for the commercial boating community. I was looking at maritime traffic last night. There are thousands of boats out there. I was riding
Yeah.
home along the East River last night, and there was a boat called the Punta Cardiz. Thing had to
Mhm.
have been 400 feet long. It was packed with cargo ships, and
Wow.
just behind it, after it left its wake at Hellgate, there was a Nordic tugboat passing by. So the idea is
Nice.
that I find that most of the availability is with the commercial teams. I have not found one for our local groups. I would say that you can be in touch with your local physician, let them know what your plans are. You can
Mhm.
take our course. And in our
Yeah.
course, we go over how to use all of this stuff. We actually have a reference guide that is available, which doesn't get into great detail. It just says A, B, C, D, do this, do this, do this.
Hmm.
I recommend to everyone in classes to read the book. If you have any questions, they always reach out to me. And then the articles in Passagemaker, we go into great detail about how to handle these things. And I want to thank Jeff for that opportunity. But the articles in Passagemaker go into great detail how to manage these situations.
Mhm.
Oh, we're definitely. I've been looking at your content. We're going to link to some of that, to some of those stories in the show notes here, because you're really onto an important topic.
I'm going to show you something. I don't know. This is kind of a cool tool. With the concept of software as a service, there are more and more tools that are increasingly available.
Mhm.
So I'm showing you something right now. You see what I'm holding?
Okay.
Yes.
Looks
Almost looks to the people who are just listening in. It almost looks like a
is
I
that
don't know,
your
portable
vape?
charger,
I know it looks like a
like
vape.
a vape pen.
Yeah, that's a great
Dr.
thing to have.
Robert. That's
Yeah, just go out to the Portuguese bridge and smoke that a few times, then go back
all
in.
right, Jeff. All right.
It is actually a very cool thing. This is called a Cardia 6XL. Basically, you put your thumbs on it in this manner, put your ankle across your knee like you're sitting down and watching TV, and it records your heart rate and it develops an EKG that you can transmit anywhere to your doctor.
What?
Isn't that cool?
Interesting. Yeah,
Yes.
that is cool.
Cardia 6XL. I don't own any part of the product, but I've really been playing with it. It's kind of cool because I can be on a boat anywhere and
Mhm.
say, my heart's racing. What do I do? You can
Yeah.
put your fingers on this and your doctor will be able to see your EKG anywhere.
Yeah. That's
I'm kind of
great.
glad. I'm kind of glad I don't have that when docking.
Yeah.
The doctor would be like, "Dan, my God, take a breath,
Yeah.
brother."
That reminds me to wear my heart rate monitor when I'm cycling while I'm docking, like I'm docking in Sag Harbor with 50 people watching. Let's see what happens, you know? But
Exactly.
it does bring up the point of like customizing these medical kits. So
Yeah.
depending on your health status and your your conditions, you may add a defibrillator to your kit. I mean,
Yeah.
we have life rafts and we have EPIRBs, and those things cost us thousands of dollars, and we hopefully never touch them. And that may be the same thing with the defibrillator. It's like to sort of customize.
Sure.
Is that something that you think about, Robert, about customizing a kit?
Yeah, I have a lot of people in our classes who ask me, should we be carrying an automatic external defibrillator?
Yeah.
And I absolutely recommend that for individuals who have known heart disease, whether it be atrial fibrillation or
Hmm.
um, heart failure or any kind of coronary artery disease. The units are very nice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what I like about the new modern units, this is the HeartSign P450. It actually leads you through the steps. These are very, anxiety provoking moments.
Of
So
course.
with the machine, it's just you push the button, it says place the pad. You place the pad, it says hold on, it analyzes the rhythm or not. If it recommends providing a shock, it says push the shock button and the shock is delivered. Obviously, this is a Mayday call.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you get on the radio and say, I'm about to apply my AED to my partner, and please stand by. This is a very important tool, and it saves lives. I'm an emergency physician, and we use electronic shocking to bring heart rates into order. I definitely recommend an automatic external defibrillator. It does save lives.
That when I think of the defibrillator, I cruise, with my family and young kids. There's gonna be a couple of my questions in a second, but I try to think about like the guests we're gonna have on board, but also like the other people you're gonna encounter on the water. I mean, how many by having it, God willing, you're not gonna have the emergency, but what if someone in the marina does, or somebody in the cove does? I think just the more we could all have those on, it's a kind of like a safety in numbers situation.
Exactly. And what I also recommend is a personal history form. That's
Mm.
included in all my kits, and I recommend that. And that actually will be in my next article for Passagemaker, getting medical assistance far from shore or far from home.
Hmm.
But this should be a list of all your medical problems, your medications, so that if there is a problem,
Yeah.
hand this to EMS and they get to the emergency room. I have everything I need to make a rapid decision. And it should include who's your primary care doctor, who's your specialist, what's your insurance information, what's your blood type, what are your allergies. All of these
Mm.
things should be on a list and kept in an envelope at the helm. And I give this to my guests when they come aboard for longer cruises. Just you never know, right? You just don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen. And I don't want to have to do a handoff with EMS or Coast Guard and say, I don't know who this person is, but I have them on my boat. So having a
Right, right.
history form is very important. By the way, am I talking too fast for you folks, or we're good?
I mean, maybe you're a New Yorker. I mean, which we're used to it, but it might be so for some of the listeners, they might want to slow it down to half speed just to catch all this because you really got some great information spread throughout. Another question, or just a kind of a little more of a personal question, is again, it's I have my two kids. One's going to be 5, and another is 10 months old. Choking is we are in the choking stage. Like this is my life. Every dinner is like a nightmare these days. They're shoving food down their faces, and no matter how many times you say, "God, medium bites, brother," they don't listen too well. But so choking is a concern I have, and I'm seeing probably my Instagram knows to serve me with these ads for these products that I wasn't familiar with in the past. These different plunger type suction devices. I wanted to ask your opinion. I bought a few just because of like the ads really worked for me. I was like, yeah, all right. Is that something you recommend? Is
Yes,
that
it's a good question. I've seen them. I've not tried one. The
okay?
actual owner of the company and I had a conversation about promoting it in my courses and whatnot. I have not actually used it, but
Mm.
from what I've seen, like you, I'm impressed with the product, and I think as a result of this call, I'll go buy one, and we'll have another talk next time. But
I'm gonna. Yeah,
you should know the Heimlich maneuver. That's an important piece for choking. Obviously, if someone's choking, you want to do the 5 back slaps
hmm
and then do a finger sweep to try and dislodge the item from the individual's throat. Obviously, if they're not responding, a Mayday call, a 911,
yeah,
and start CPR. That's really what happens. I know I was up in the Grand Canyon with my kids, and I try not to be the doctor when I'm away on vacation. I try to be on vacation. And
sure.
unfortunately, the fellow at the table across from me started holding his hands to his throat in that really classic sign of choking. And my
Yeah,
daughter,
yeah.
Dad, do something. I was saying, I just want to have dinner. And
Oh my God.
but then I came to my senses. And I went over and gave him the 5
Yeah.
back and got this big chunk of meat and
Oh my God.
got a free dessert as a result.
I was gonna say if he didn't pick up your tab, man, I'm putting that meat back in.
Yeah. Yeah, but these are very specific life-saving things, and just always remind yourself you're not the patient, you're the rescuer. Stay
Right.
calm. You can do this.
Ooh,
This is stuff
yeah.
that you can do as long as you remain calm.
Yeah. That leads me back to your course at Trollerfest, Robert. So as you said, you're the caregiver, not the patient, but there's going to be times, when you're going to be the patient. So how do you assure, your first mate or your passengers are sort of on the same page with medical treatment? And even if you have this long list of first aid and CPR training. They may not have that, but you may go down and then you have to be, taken care of. How is that addressed in your class? Because I'm sure people ask you about that.
Great. So the other night I had my wife Artis on my Nordic Tug 42, and there was no one to help get me on the mooring, and so I had to teach her how to use the bow and stern thrusters and
Hmm.
speed up and slow down the engine. She's never done that before. It's a rather large boat for her, and she's
Hmm.
not a boater. It's the same thing with the medical kit. When I
Mm.
sell and share these medical kits with individuals, I say, go through every item, open up the item, get a feel for it, understand what the elasticity is in that elastic bandage, understand what the stickiness on the tape is when you use a steri strip or a butterfly bandage. Make sure you understand how these ointment packages open up, and just take everything apart and play with it so that you're familiar with it, so that when the situation comes, you're not first looking at the kit. In our kit, what I have on the back of the card is an entire organization of everything that's in the kit. So you know it's in the front compartment, the side compartment, the back compartment, everything is there. And I encourage everyone, take out the kit and play with it, because these are your life-saving tools. No one would go down into the engine room and not know where the oil dipstick is, right? You have to know what's in your kit.
Yeah.
Without knowing what's in your kit, you're going to have a moment of panic, taking everything apart. Where is this? Where is that? You want to know what's in your kit and how to find it. I can close my eyes and I can find everything in my kit, tactile simulation in the dark, anytime at all.
That's such a good point. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this is important stuff. All of us think about engine checks and oil checks and
Right.
gas checks and water, but this is your
Yeah.
first, this should be
Yeah.
part of your checklist before and after every voyage.
I mean, I think it really just makes a lot of sense. And I gotta think people are similar to me, like boaters carry a pretty serious kit, but I guess as we're entering the boating season, it's just after Memorial Day. When was the last time you opened that sucker up? And so, I mean, I'm so embarrassed. My kit was so old. At one point, I went to open it up and I realized I had some Tylenol in there because I packed that for one of the trips, like make Tylenol, sunscreen, and it was up to date. It was up to date 5 years ago. I opened this thing up, opened up the Tylenol, I would have killed somebody. This thing, it was like black with mold. I was like, oh my God. It's
Uh,
really have to see what is expired, and the even the gauze pads were still probably good. The paper started to brown and yellow. It was like, okay, stop being so cheap. It's time to get an upgrade. I mean, this is not the thing to cut costs on.
so the other thing in our kit is the checklist. And over here,
Mhm.
it's not showing up well on the camera, but everything that's in the kit is outlined with the quantity so that I can do a quick check. Let me
Yeah.
just have one moment. I'm going to get my kid and show you something.
Sure.
The kits are, I would think that, Dan, waiting for Robert, for me, if I have something that's like almost like a ditch bag, I take the kit off the boat with me back and then would replenish it at home and then hopefully not forget it when I go to the boat. And then instead of leaving it on the boat the whole time.
Yeah. It's smart.
Robert,
So
let's see what you got there.
yeah. So the first thing I want to
Organized.
impress you with is the heavy duty bags that everything is in. Everything
Yeah.
is sealed in a bag. This is moisture proof, right?
Okay.
So
Mhm.
whatever's in here is not going to get damaged. This is the Dentec I was talking about, but everything in this kit, I
Yeah.
can reach in and know right away where's my gauze. I have over
Right.
here my
Okay.
bandages. I have over here
Yeah.
everything I need is wrapped up and readily accessible. Over here are all my ointments and my pills and medications.
Mhm.
Inside here, I have my quick reference guide that I can pull out and be able to understand how I take care of people.
Yeah.
Everything is readily accessible. In the front of the pocket here, I come in here and here is my sprains and strain package. And over here are my hot and cold packs. Everything is readily accessible and put together so that if I need it,
Mhm.
I can get it. Over here, for example, if I open this up quickly, something people don't think about. Do you have a whistle in your emergency kit? I need to get help quick. It may be,
Yeah.
you're on the dock and you're not going to have your radio nearby. So have a whistle.
Yeah.
We talked about the contactless thermometer. I love these tools because they make things so easy. Over here, for example, I would never want to put this in someone's mouth while on high seas.
No.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I wouldn't want that either. That's
But what you can also use are these really great tools that are called temperature dots. These are strips that moms know all about for their kids. It just goes on the forehead, reads the temperature. But then, of
Mhm.
course, you can always use the contactless thermometer over here and just pushing the button
Mhm.
and holding it to the skin, 98. And
That's
that's how
great.
fast these things work. Other
That's
tools
great.
you should have on board, and I won't belay the topic. I really, really recommend everyone having a splinter removal kit and forceps. Splinter removal kits are
Oh,
critically
good.
important,
Yeah.
particularly if you jump off the boat and you got a stinger from a sea urchin, or you've gotten stung by a octopus or other jellyfish, and you want to remove the nematocysts. These splinter removal kits are vital to taking care of that. A small pen light. You should have a pen light on board. So in case you're talking to someone, you need to be able to see. Trauma shears and bandage shears. These are all things that you want to make sure you have in your kit so that you can properly take care of an individual. Kind of cool, right?
Yeah, I highly organized. I mean, most of the people that boats I get on, their boats, so you can eat off the engine. They keep their boats so particular and so meticulous, but then you maybe would go look at their emergency medical kit and it looks like the junk drawer at your house, you know? It's just
You
a
don't want
mess of stuff almost coagulated at the bottom. So you're making some really good points. Those 4 or 5 millimeter waterproof bags, everything's in there. And just, like any checklist that you do before you go on a cruise, before you file a cruising,
your
Boat plan.
plan.
yeah, a boat. Yeah. So it's like the same thing. You're just gonna, but we're running close to the limit here. So Dan, a couple more things we want to ask Robert before we let him go.
Well, I guess just I'm curious of all your time spent on the water. Did you ever have? I mean, you're always out there helping other people, but in your own personal recreational boating, if have you had any emergencies that kind of serve as a final lesson to our audience?
I think staying calm is the most important thing.
Mhm.
Remember, you're providing care and a service to someone who's injured. So remaining comfortable and knowing what to do, having these steps in your mind, they're simple steps. Stop
Yeah.
bleeding, you're going to apply pressure. Strain, you're going to apply ice and pressure and elevate. Keeping everything organized and calm so that when you address the individual, they know you're in charge and you can begin taking care of them in a proper way. And of course, alerting authorities for assistance when needed, whether it be Pan or Mayday, also is helpful. And of course, as Jeff mentioned, having your boating plan available so people know where you are and how to get to you in a time of need.
Yeah. I mean, it's all. This has been a really great refresher, but also a lot of really good new information, especially, when it comes to the kits and a couple of things I'm going to go out and try to get my hands on this week. Because I think the point to bring home for our audience also is like, on land, an ambulance could be maybe 8 minutes away, 9 minutes away, but I mean, on the water, it's people aren't starting to come to your aid. It's time is rarely on your side, so you need to be able
Yeah.
to save yourself a little bit.
Mhm.
Something we didn't talk about is evacuation. I don't know if we have time, but being prepared for an evacuation on the water is a big moment. I'm
Hmm.
serving as the chief medical officer at the Robbie Pierce, as we talked about at the outset. We don't
Hmm.
take people off boats. We just will tie a line onto the mast and tow them to shore as rapidly as we can, notifying all the Harbor Patrol and the Sea Tow and the Boat US folks as well. And we also have land pickup organizations, so we know where to meet the ambulances so when they're onshore, so we can make a rapid
Hmm.
transfer from
Mhm.
the boat to the ambulances. So these are things you want to think about and plan for as you're planning your trips.
That's
What
smart.
what really makes sense to me, your overarching theme of like being calm is to not cause even more panic and distress, but it's being calm comes from being prepared, having the training, having the tools, and you've been a really great resource for us and our audience. And I would encourage everybody to check out your online class at Boaters University. It's gonna be one of those things you hope you never need to know it, but the peace of mind and confidence that comes from training is absolutely worth it. I appreciate you putting that together for us.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I enjoyed talking with you today.
I've got one
I,
last one for you, Robert. We've got a few more minutes. You've been doing the Trawler Fest course for a couple of years now. So, what in your mind, if you could think, is the best question you were asked that really made you think during your class at Trawler Fest?
What time is the break so I can go to the bathroom?
All right. After that,
I can get it. I get that.
I think the biggest questions are around cardiac arrest, CPR, and AEDs. Most people in the population that attend the courses are concerned about their own health and the health of their partners. And so how to use an AED, whether they should take a CPR course, whether the CPR course would include a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or just chest compressions. It depends upon the level of comfort you have. In my kit, we also give a CPR masks, so that if you have to give CPR, we have a very simple mask that you can put over your face or the face of the victim, so that you can provide CPR safely. But those are the biggest questions I have, is how do I handle CPR? Remembering CPR, you have to do chest compressions 100 to 120 times a minute. I actually have a metronome that we put in the class and have everyone start pushing their hands together.
Yeah.
It gets tiring after 2 minutes
Yeah.
of doing this. So it's something to be prepared for and understand what will be expected.
Great.
Yeah. I mean,
Excellent.
staying calm in that situation with a loved one or a old time friend that you're cruising with is got to be, incredibly difficult, I could imagine.
So I say, take your pulse and remind yourself who the patient is.
Good
Stay
advice.
calm.
Good advice.
That's great advice. Thank you, Dr. Robert. I hope we see you out on the water this summer. And to everyone listening, again, take the time, get your med kit squared away, get the training, and stay safe out on the water.
Thanks, everyone. It's been great chatting with you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
You
Doctor.
too.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Without my love for the ocean, I would be long gone by now. It's some kind of devotion.